All right, today we are diving deep into what is, without a doubt, the single greatest conflict in the entire history of Middle-earth. I'm talking about a war so huge, so utterly devastating, it didn't just end an age. It literally broke the world and remade it from the ground up. This is the story of the War of Wrath.
So let me ask you this. What was the biggest war in Middle-earth's history? Now, I know what you're thinking. The War of the Ring, right? Boromir, Helm's Deep, all that. But believe it or not, that was just the last little echo of a much, much bigger conflict that came before it. A war that had gods and dragons and the elves in their absolute prime, all fighting for the very soul of the world.
Okay, so here's how we're going to break this epic story down. We'll look at A Light Betrayed, the Oath of Fëanor, what's called the Long Defeat, Arendil's impossible voyage, the main event itself, the War of Wrath, and finally, what was left, a broken new world. You'll see how this whole thing was a tragic chain of events, kind of like a domino effect, starting with this perfect, beautiful creation and then one terrible crime.
First up, Part 1, A Light Betrayed. This is the spark that lit the whole fire. See, to really get this war, you have to go way back to the beginning, back to a time of pure divine light, before the world was broken and shadows even existed.
And right at the very heart of this story, you have these things, the Silmarils. Now, these weren't just pretty jewels. I want you to try and imagine capturing the light of paradise itself, the pure, uncorrupted light from before anything bad had happened in the world. That's what was inside them. They were literally perfection made solid.
And this brings us to our two main players, the ones who really set everything in motion. On one side, you've got Fëanor. He was, hands down, the most gifted of all the elves, a true genius of a craftsman. But his pride? Wow. It was his greatest strength and his absolute deepest flaw. And then on the other side, you have Morgoth, the first Dark Lord, the ultimate source of all evil in the world. And he coveted those Silmarils more than anything else in creation.
So what happens? Morgoth doesn't just steal the jewels. No, he does something far worse. He teams up with this primordial spider creature of pure darkness called Ungoliant, and together they destroy the very source of the light, the two trees of Valinor. They literally kill the light of the world, and then he flees with the Silmarils, plunging this blessed realm into total darkness. All right, part 2, the Oath of Fëanor, which is basically the fuel poured on the fire. Now, an act of terror like that, it could have been met with grief, right? With sorrow. But Fëanor's response? Nope. It was a fiery, all-consuming rage that would end up dooming his people for an entire age.
And this is what sealed their fate. Fëanor and his 7 sons swore a terrible oath, and it went something like this. They swore an oath which none shall break and none should take, to pursue with vengeance and hatred to the ends of the world Vala, demon, elf, or man who should hold or take or keep a Silmaril from their possession. Think about that. They didn't just vow to get the Silmarils back from Morgoth. They vowed to wage war on anyone, god, demon, elf, you name it, who kept a Silmaril from them. It was this unbreakable, terrible vow that basically set them against the entire world.
And the consequences were immediate and just horrific. To chase Morgoth, they needed ships, but their own kin, the Teleri elves, said no. So what did Fëanor's followers do? They attacked them. They slaughtered their own kind to steal their ships, the first time elves had ever spilled the blood of elves. Because of this, they were exiled from the Undying Lands, and a curse, the doom of Mandos, was laid on them. It basically prophesied that their war would end in nothing but endless sorrow and betrayal.
So that brings us to our third part, the Long Defeat, a hopeless struggle. Once they get to Middle-earth, the exiled elves, the Noldor, they start their war against Morgoth. And for almost 600 years, they fight with incredible bravery. But that curse, it hung over everything they did, turning their war into this slow, grinding, hopeless defeat. I mean, they held him at bay for centuries, which is amazing. But one by one, their kingdoms and their defenses just crumbled. The Dagor Bragollach, the Battle of Sudden Flame, broke their long siege of his fortress. Then came the Nernath Arnawedia, the Battle of Unnumbered Tears, which was just a catastrophic defeat, all thanks to betrayal among their allies, just like the curse predicted. And finally, their last hidden strongholds, the great kingdom of Nargothrond and the legendary city of Gondolin, were discovered and utterly destroyed.
Okay, on to Section 4, Arendil's impossible voyage, the last hope. At this point, the armies of elves and men are shattered. All their great kingdoms are in ruins. It really truly seemed like Morgoth's victory was total. All hope was gone, except for one impossible, desperate gamble.
And this last, flickering hope rested on one man, Arendelle. He was special, the son of a human hero and an elven princess, so he had the blood of both races. And, crucially, he happened to have one of the stolen Silmarils. With its holy light blazing on his brow, he did what no one else could. He sailed his ship, Vingalot, into the Forbidden West, past all the magical barriers, to plead the case for both elves and men before the gods themselves.
And his plea was heard. This leads us to Part 5, the War of Wrath, the climax. The Valar, the divine guardians of the world, were moved. They felt both pity and, well, a whole lot of anger. They decided the time had come to step in directly and end Morgoth's reign of terror once and for all.
Now listen, this wasn't just another army of elves. No way. This was the host of Valinor. We're talking about a force of divine beings, the Maiar, and the ranks of the Vanyar, elves who had never left paradise. They came to Middle-earth with the power to literally unmake the world. And that's pretty much what happened. The war that followed was on a scale that has never been seen before or since. For over 40 years, think about that, 4 decades, the War of Wrath raged across the north of Middle-earth. It was a battle of gods and dragons and armies so vast they reshaped the very continent. Morgoth's legions of orcs? Wiped out like they were nothing. His Balrogs, those ancient terrors of fire and shadow, destroyed. Even his ultimate trump card, a whole fleet of winged dragons, was defeated in a legendary battle in the sky.
And in the end, Morgoth himself was dragged out from the deepest pit of his fortress, Angband. His crown was beaten into a collar for his neck. His power was utterly broken, his armies were annihilated, and he was physically thrown out of the world, cast through a door at the edge of creation into the timeless void, exiled from the world forever.
And that brings us to our final section, a broken new world, the aftermath. So the greatest evil the world would ever know was defeated. The war was won. But the sheer power that was unleashed to get that victory was so immense that it scarred the world permanently. It was victory, yes, but it came at an absolutely terrible cost, a price that would define all the ages still to come. Just look at this. The land of Beleriand, where all these wars were fought for centuries, it couldn't withstand the power of the Valar. The entire continent was shattered, broken, and sank beneath the sea, gone forever. But from that destruction, something new was made. As a reward for the men who stood with them, the Valar raised a brand new island out of the ocean, the island of Numenor, a blessed kingdom for them to call home. So this was the new state of the world. Morgoth is banished forever. The whole continent of Beleriand is destroyed, drowned under the waves. The 2 Silmarils that were recovered, well, they were also lost, one to the earth and one to the sea, because the last sons of Feanor couldn't touch them. But a little seed of that old evil was left behind. Morgoth's chief lieutenant, his most powerful servant, Sauron, he escaped the final battle and went into hiding.